As the years passed, I tried to bury that day, to ignore the nagging sensation that something had been watching me, waiting for the right time to make its presence known. Life moved on, as it always does. I grew older, more aware of the world around me, and eventually, I moved away from that house. But no matter where I went, that memory, that feeling, followed me like a shadow. It wasn't just the memory itself that haunted me. It was the way it twisted in my mind. It was like a puzzle that, the more I tried to piece it together, the more fragmented it became. Every time I thought I had a clear understanding of what happened that day, something new would emerge, some new detail, some new fear. I would lie in bed at night, unable to sleep, the sound of a ticking clock from somewhere in the house creeping into my consciousness. Tick, tock. The rhythm would repeat itself in my mind until it was all I could hear. It was as though that sound had become tied to the memory, each tick a reminder of that moment of pure terror. The voice would echo through my thoughts like a haunting refrain, never leaving, always just out of reach. Shall I come in? Shall I? The question would replay over and over, just like it had all those years ago. It wasn't just the voice that disturbed me. It was the feeling, the presence, that seemed to linger long after the memory had faded. Whenever I went back to visit that house, or even when I passed the area where it stood, a cold shiver would run down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, watching. Sometimes, when the wind would rustle the leaves in the trees outside, I would stop in my tracks, listening to the strange, almost unnatural sounds. Was it the wind, or something else, something far worse? I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. A child's imagination, warped by fear, creating something that wasn't there. But deep down, I knew the truth. That day had happened. And whatever I had seen wasn't human. It wasn't anything I could explain. It wasn't until much later, when I had grown older and began to learn more about the strange, supernatural aspects of Australian folklore, that I started to understand the gravity of what I had encountered. Australia's history is steeped in dark tales of creatures that lurk just beyond the edge of civilization. The Bunyip, the Yowie, and other such beings, some ancient, others malevolent. These are the stories that are passed down through generations, stories that seem so absurd to the uninitiated, but to those who know, they carry a weight of truth. I started to wonder if what I had seen that day was one of these creatures, a being that had wandered too close to the world of the living. The figure that stood at my back door, its presence had felt ancient, as if it had been watching me for much longer than I could comprehend. The way it swayed in the wind, as if it were caught between two worlds, made me question whether it had been trying to cross over. Was it trying to get in? Or was it just testing me? And then, one night, I found something that sent a chill through my entire body. I was going through some old family photographs, trying to remember the details of my childhood, when I came across a picture of my family standing in front of the house. It was taken not long before that terrible day. I remember the moment it was taken. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the property, the air cool and still. But in the background of that photo, behind my parents and brother, there was something I hadn't noticed before. A figure. Standing in the bushes. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. But as I looked closer, the blood in my veins ran cold. The figure in the photo was not human. It was the same shape as the thing I had seen at the door, the same outline, the same darkness that filled the space between the trees. I zoomed in on the photo, my heart hammering in my chest, my breath shallow. There it was, unmistakable. The same empty, dark eyes, the same unnatural posture. It was there. Had it always been there? Had it been watching us all along? My mind began to unravel, trying to piece together what this meant. Had this thing been lurking in the shadows of our property, hiding just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to make itself known? Or was it something that followed me, something that waited for me to open the door to it? I couldn't stop thinking about it. That photo, the figure, the voice. It was all connected, I knew it. I was not dealing with a simple childhood memory. This was something far more terrifying, something beyond human comprehension. The more I dug into the history of the land, the more unsettling things I uncovered. There were stories, old ones, stories that locals in the nearby town had whispered about for years. The land we had lived on had once been the site of a settlement, long abandoned, a place where people had disappeared without a trace. Some said it was cursed, that the spirits of those who had vanished still roamed the land, unable to move on. Others spoke of something darker, a creature that had fed on fear and sorrow, a being that existed between the cracks of the physical world and the spirit realm. I began to fear that what I had encountered that day was not just an isolated event. I had unknowingly stumbled upon something ancient, something that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Maybe it was tied to the land. Maybe it had always been there, watching, waiting for the right person to come along, someone who would unlock the door. But the worst part, the thing that keeps me up at night, is this: I'm not sure it was ever truly gone. Every time I close my eyes, I can still feel its presence, standing just behind the door, its cold breath on the other side. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I hear that voice again, whispering in the dark. Shall I come in? Shall I? I know what it wants now. It doesn't want to ask to come inside. No, it wants something else. Something far more sinister. And one day, it will come back. And when it does, will you open the door?